it's not as though we were at zero and there was an additional amount of money that came in that put us above zero. We would still be below that. We're still using the fund balance to balance the budget. So I don't know if I would necessarily feel comfortable going deeper in that to come up with a temporary solution. And that's really what it would be. I think even what's being proposed right now would just be a temporary solution, maybe another couple of months or another budget year, and it's not going to be addressing what I think we need to do in terms of developing some long-term funding for not only the library but the other city services that are being cut drastically in the coming years.
Further discussion of the amendment. Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin.
First of all, I disagree with Council Member Fleming's characterization. I did hear it a lot from Troy Citizens United representatives tonight that this is, by definition, the closing of the library. We could say this, by definition, is less in our road service. This, by definition, is Xing out the community police. This, by definition, all of those things are in cap. What we're doing here is trying to live within our means, within the funds we have in balance. And by suggesting that we go in and take 2.1 and add to our deficit is surprising. And I'll tell you why. I've sat on this council now for 4 years. This is my 4th budget cycle. And there were times I sat in the room specifically where there was complete resistance to going in and doing this very thing, let alone at these numbers. 2.1 million of non-recurring dollars. This is a one-time only expenditure. Now, we heard a year ago Councilmember Beltramini talking about shared services at the last one. A year ago, I was in there talking about road services. What would it take to bring our roads up to good? $30 million. There are a lot of things that we're missing in our structure and services going forward. A lot have to do with public safety. There are grave concerns. But this is imprudent. We cannot spend these dollars twice. I would love in my house to have a new kitchen. I have original appliances. I need electric update. I got a furnace. It's a safety issue. We have to live within our means until we're certain of what comes before us. Even these numbers that are here with us tonight, I agree with Councilmember Beltramini, 2 weeks from now we'll see a different lay on the land. Now, I understood and supported the idea of bringing the act of adopting to the table. And for our acting clerk, I think it actually would be adopts. It would add an S, but that's just a grammatical correction on this. But I agreed with that when Councilmember Beltramini added that we really should have this happen by council, an act of adoption, and I believe with that. But I am quite surprised that 2 weeks away from true budget discussions, we would have an amendment like this. I'm voting no. I'm voting no on the substance and the merit of doing this, further increasing our deficit. We know full well that the state has just initiated emergency managers, and this is nothing more than a red flag.
Is there anyone that hasn't spoken that wishes to speak on the amendment? Councilman Beltramini, do you wish to respond to questions from Councilman Hawryluk?
Councilman Hawryluk is right that the percentage of fund balance is going down, but if you will look across the last few years and the years going forward, there is about 1 to 1.2, even if you put the 4 police officers back in, of unallocated fund balance above the 15%. Also, a year ago, I did give a specific shared sacrifice plan to management. And they told me at the time that they could not act on it because council had said they must pursue John Zerlike's option 1. And that is why it was never discussed with council. I did present it to management. And now that we're a year into the amputation theory, I am not sure how much of that is still doable. I have not done one for this budget cycle. But I do believe that a shared sacrifice of cutting all services to some degree is better than cutting them one at a time until they are all gone. That's how I manage my household. That's how other communities with signature services seem to be balancing. And it, again, I say, today it's the library, tomorrow it's cops in the community, it's officers in the school, it's directed patrols, it's plowing. And if we do this one service at a time, we're going to have this discussion forever. We have to right our ship so that it can live within the means as they diminish, if the pot is going to remain at a standard millage rate. Does that answer your question?
And I think it was, because also it was Councilman Slater had that question about shared services. So it was a dual question. Okay, anyone else want to discuss the amendment?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
The, regarding the amendment per se and Councilwoman Kerwin's comments about taking out a fund balance, that was the exact thing that council directed management to do on February the 28th when this city council added back 7 positions without a revenue stream to accommodate it. You essentially did the same exact thing, and instead of finding out what those positions specifically would be doing, you said just add them in. And then that's a recurring stream, by the way. We've managed to, by the way, fit them in, and yet we're still planning to use less fund balance. So is this the best format? I don't know. But this is the, we're readopting a 3-year budget. If we had brought forward the amendments, I don't know that the amendments are so much debatable as readopting the whole budget is. The main differences here are the 7 positions and the obviously the numbers updates and the community center remaining open. Obviously, if we can keep the community center open and it pays for itself, that's a great thing to do. So that's it.
I have heard discussion of people that have said, yes, you're able to keep the community center open now, but the services are going to be greatly declining. The programs are greatly declining just because it is not receiving a stipend from the general fund and won't be. There are people that are unhappy about that situation also. So each time we have to do something with declining services, whether it's snow plowing or, whatever it is, we're hearing from people. When we discuss the community conversations later, I'll share with you some of the things that people said at those meetings to me personally. But I think that it would be ill-advised to pass this amendment at this time.
Your Honor?
Further discussion? Yes, Mr. Zerlike?
Just again, and for clarification, the charter requires the city manager to submit a budget, a 1-year budget. Council agreed to have a 3-year budget submitted, but it no longer became the city manager's option 1 when it was adopted by city council. It became city council's option to select. And if you take a look at what we had to do inductively from particular to generals, first we'll take a look at the building department. They're gone. Engineering department is half gone, and we have the optimum mix now for administering our capital programming. Plan department is gone 60%. HR, clerk, treasury, purchasing are cut so much that they're unsustainable unless we cross-train them, and that's going to be a huge task for Mr. Lamorato. Public Works was cut so much we had to add back 5 people to make them sustainable. Parks had to have 2 people added back. That the fire department, you can't beat the fire department, 160 volunteers and 11 full-time people. That leaves the manager's office. I've redeployed Mr. Miller, and ICMA said that given the staffing levels now in our office, that we're probably going to be behind the 8 ball in terms of economic development attraction because we don't have the staffing involved to go out in the community as much as we should, as well as outside of the community. That leaves the police department. You had taken a look at ICMA's report on the police department going back to 1978 levels, essentially. The good news there is that even with all the cuts that have to be made, we'll still have more than an emergency response department only, but it's going to take a lot of work. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Any more on the amendment? The vote, Mrs. Bittner, on the amendment?
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Howerlich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
No.
Councilmember McGinnis?
No.
Slater?
No.
Mayor Schilling?
No.
Councilmember Beltramini?
No.
Motion fails.
Mayor?
The resolution is before us. Councilman Howerlich?
Yes, I have a follow-up question about some information that was submitted by management.
Was this your questions that you had today?
They are, yes. And one question that I asked and was specifically what impact will residents see as a result of the restoration of these positions? The response to the 5 that would be in streets and drains, I understand. The second paragraph in this memo says, Department of Public Works Parks includes the addition of 2 positions and will maintain a tree specialist and maintenance employee. The tree specialist will act as an in-house resource and inspect contracted tree services. The maintenance employee will serve as a contracted maintenance inspector and customer service representative by providing contractor oversight. And my follow-up question is, if I understand it, at least this is implying that the only thing that these 2 individuals are doing is inspecting and overseeing contracted services. Am I mistaken?
I'm going to have Mark Miller respond to that. He was involved in that aspect of the study more than I was, even though I am now in charge directly of Public Works. He has more background than I have. My responsibilities from this point forward is going to be more toward the cross-training of all the employees in that sector. Mark?
Mr. Miller?
That's their primary function, is involved with trees and managing the contractors who will do the bulk of the work.
And would you explain why that is important for them to be supervising them? Because I understand it, but I want the public to.
What ICMA found is that if we did not have these employees, we would have contractors in the field working, and there would not be sufficient oversight over those contractors. Because when you start contracting or outsourcing, there's new responsibilities, and that's managing the contractors to make sure that they're doing the work appropriately and correctly.
It would be similar to if we had a road project and let's say we contract with Dan's Excavating, like we did on Rochester Road.
Correct. Or when I provide the oversight of Safe Built for the building department.
Yes, and we have a city employee that, or several, that need to inspect and make sure they're doing the correct things. It's like when they were doing the roadway along Square Lake, which is near my house. Not only was there a city employee that was making sure they were doing it correctly, but also because of the high-powered gas main that is under Square Lake Road, the folks from Consumers had to be there. And if anything went wrong, it came too close, they would stop the operation, make sure that things were done correctly. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilman Howerlich?
Yeah, yes, actually, I wanted to also know if what the credentials for the tree specialist will be. Will this individual be a certified arborist, for example?
I don't know the exact answer, and I don't believe that. Go ahead, John.
From the management perspective, what we're doing is we're combining the superintendent of streets and drains with the superintendent of parks. So that's an elimination of one management position. And Mr. Jeff Bigler is going to become the superintendent of those 2 divisions. Tom Rosewarne is going to retire. And Jeff has a slew of certifications in the parks area. I'm not certain which certifications his employees are required to have, but I'll be happy to get them and supply them next week.
Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
just a follow-up question. Isn't it true, Mr. Miller or Mr. Manager, that Jeff Bigler has, in fact, when developers are coming before the Planning Commission and City Council itself and have put in a plan, landscaping plan, that Bigler has, in fact, over these years, looked at those trees to ensure that they have been in keeping with the instructions that we have on file?
Yes.
So not only will he continue doing the job that he has been doing to ensure that those things are in place, but also he's taking on another hat. Is that correct?
He's doing 2 jobs, yes.
Okay, whether he's an arborist or not, he has a lot of experience in this area. Years and years and years of experience in this particular area. Thank you.
Anyone else on a question on this item?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
Yes, actually, from a policy perspective, I mean, it's not whether or not somebody is good at what they've been tasked to do. The question is, from a policy perspective, do you want somebody to oversee people with more experience and credentials than the person in charge of the actual overseeing? So just a policy question, not an individual question, but a policy question. If the answer is no, and that's what management and the City Council believes, then that's fine. But if the answer is yes, then let's make sure that that's what's happening. That was my only point.
Okay.
The other question I had was with respect to my question about the number of sworn police officers and PSAs on staff at the police department. The response I got was a budget response. I wanted to know where we are in actuality as far as sworn police officers and PSAs today.
Mr. Zerlag, the
Chief Mayor
is
can
here,
respond to that, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Chief Mayor? Could the individual that has their feet out in the aisle please pull them back? I don't want someone to fall. Thank you. Yes.
The question is, where are we currently with police officers and police service aides? We are budgeted 123 sworn police officers. We're currently at 120. That's down, the budget amount is down 8 from last year's budget, but we're actually down 11. For civilian employees, we're down a total of 10 budgeted positions, and we have 8 vacant positions. I'm sorry, I misspoke on that. We're down 10. The 8 includes the police officer positions. PSAs themselves, we're down 2 budgeted positions, and we have 3 empty positions, so that's a total of 5 for police service aides.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, any other questions on the resolution that's before us? This is the main motion.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
The concern that I have is this, and it's really rather simple, is that if the majority of this city council believes that there should be a library, then we need to find a way to get that done. And if it's going to get done, and we have that will, it will get done. But not only that, but then if it is going to get done, we need to take closing it off the table. And so hopefully we can do this before the end of the month. I think you have to take into consideration foregone revenues from the standpoint of revenues that come in external, meaning the Bloomfield Hills revenues, the state revenues, and then you also have the issue of you're sending everybody out to go and get a library card if they want to continue to have checkout privileges. That's a hidden cost. And let's say, for example, you have people that want to check out a book after the 30th of April. They can't do it here, so they have to buy a card. Well, then if we, say, on the 7th of May, decide we're going to find a way to keep the library open, and they've already shelled out the money, or maybe we do it on the 6th of June, pick a date. We need to have some consistency here. And if something is going to happen now from a tax standpoint or from a budgetary standpoint, or if something is going to be placed on the ballot in November, then it's kind of going to beg the question of whether or not we have the will to do something from a temporary standpoint. I offer that, and that's going to explain my next move, which is going to be to postpone this item. I will resolve that we postpone the active resolution for 2 weeks.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Howard, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we postpone the action on the main motion for 2 weeks. Discussion?
Well, again, Madam Mayor, I guess
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I understand that certainly the merits of Councilmember Howard, and I think that we do have opportunities to discuss actually both. One in our next study session, which will talk about what we heard from the community. But in bringing this forward, I think it answered a question that Council Member Beltramini felt was important, and that was the action of looking at taking an action on something we received in November. It's April. That's what I guess I'm confused at. I thought this was responsive to that request. That's what we received as the winter update. And so I can understand, talking about the concerns that we heard from the community, I can certainly understand in looking at the budgets that we're going to be doing in 2 weeks. But the urgency to take an action on revising this budget was why it came before us. I'll vote no.
Further discussion on the postponement? The vote, Mrs. Bittner, on the postponement?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
No.
Councilmember McGinnis?
No.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
No.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Motion passes. The postponement passed. Do we? Okay. Council's going to take a 5-minute break. We'll come back to the rest of the agenda then. Our next item is the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Beltrame?
resolved that the Troy City Council hereby approves all items on the consent agenda as presented with the exception of?
Any items that need to be exempted?
No exceptions.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we approve all of the consent agenda items with this vote. I was hoping to hold off for a vote so that Councilwoman McGinnis could be included in the vote.
She's coming.
Oh, here she is. Okay. That's why I was stretching it. Okay. The motion is for approval of all the consent agenda items. Councilwoman McGinnis, did you have any you wanted exempted?
No, I did not.
Okay. I waited to, no, it's all right. I just wanted to make sure we included you with it. Okay, Mrs. Bittner, the vote?
Councilmember McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howlerleck,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin.
Yes.
Motion passes. The council, there's a couple of memorandums here. The one that the gentleman spoke and gave the manila folder to, some other ones. The zoning text amendment is coming back, that's the rewrite, and outdoor seating for Kappa Grill will come back. And as I indicated at the beginning of the meeting, the matter of Waddles Road speed limit will come back, all of the speed limits, I guess, because there were some others that were included, will come back on a future agenda. Council comments. I was not here at the meeting last Monday, but was pleased that other council members commented about Waddles Road and that the staff asked for a restudy of that area, because I had already determined my own personal feelings about that, having driven that area for many, many years, over and over in all kinds of weather. And so I'm glad that that's being looked at. Don't know the results till we get the results, and then it will come back to council. So, but I do appreciate the rest of you that made comments about that, because I had been, if I had been here, I would have brought it up.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Slater?
would it be possible to talk about K-02A for a second?
Yes, I didn't mean by just commenting on them that we couldn't go back to it. Yes, Councilman Slater?
I just would like to ask staff, it's the intent to bring this back with a resolution next meeting?
Our intent was to bring it back next meeting with the resolution to approve, based on the conversation that council had last Monday about not wanting to sell property. I thought that I didn't want to jam it in for this coming week, but we are making a recommendation to approve it. So if you wanted to act on it any time, you can.
That will come back to us, and we'll have this information that he brought plus the other.
Okay.
Councilman Slater?
Yeah, I see it as a different issue than the one from last week, so I just wanted to make sure that the gentleman that was here to speak tonight doesn't get an impression that, at least I don't think it's the same type as last week, and
Okay.
and I would be in favor of this.
Okay. Councilman Beltrame?
As long as we're on that question for management, if I might, will any of this require rezoning to get the job done?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I mean,
but-
there's a house on a piece of property now which always screams residential to me, but it may not be zoned residential, so that's why I asked.
Does Mr. Miller know?
I don't know, but I can try to check really quick.
I'd appreciate
I
it.
don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Well, and that probably won't impact my decision on whether or not to sell, but it is a piece of the process, and it may make me look at the property holistically a little differently. So that's all.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
Well,
Miller?
the parcel that we're selling would not need to be rezoned.
Right.
Unless they want to upgrade it for whatever reason. But I think some of the other parcels that they're considering would have to be rezoned, which is all part of the picture.
Right.
Because they were talking about the, is it the Masonic Temple back there, I believe, which I'm pretty sure is zoned residential.
Your Honor, the gentleman, I think.
We don't take members of the audience when we're in the middle of the meeting. It was only at the beginning. Sorry.
My
Okay.
apologies, I forgot.
Otherwise, I'll be doing it all the time. Council comments? Anybody have any items they want brought up? Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Beltrame?
Just as a point of information, this was given to us, and I'm hoping that this will, we don't have to approve this.
Is this the K item?
Yeah.
No, there was,
This is the Nature Center operational hours.
oh, no, I just wanted the council to know before it became a press release what's going to happen.
Well, and I appreciate that. We're losing some staff there, and so the hours will be cut back, and I think the public needs to know that. They'll be cut back yet again, at least in the short term. Open as they are now, Thursday and Friday, 10 to 2. Saturday from 10 to 4. But the building will be closed Sunday through Wednesday instead of open on Sundays now. So people need to know that that begins May 1 and goes through the 27th.
Is it going to be posted on the fence
We'll post it
outside of
wherever
the
we need
property?
to. I'll assure that Mr. Alderman has everything posted appropriately.
Thanks.
And also, the building will be closed to the public effective May 28th, with the
Right.
exception of scheduled programs.
Yeah. I think if it's posted on the fence so that if, people going
Good
by
idea.
and making their plans, they will know.
We'll make
Okay,
that happen.
Any other council comments?
Mayor?
Yes. Councilman Howard?
I just wanted to chime in on K2A since I kind of started the whole conversation about real estate at the last meeting. A couple of things. One, thank you very much to the city manager for providing this to us as a green memo. And the other question I would have is, do we intend then to sell it to the Castlemark Homes, or is this actually going to be available for public bidding?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Miller, who had worked with Castlemark Homes.
Miller?
The proposal is to follow the remnant parcel policy. And there is a party who is the party who is listed in the memo, and we always check with neighboring property owners if they have a desire, and if they do, then we couldn't follow the remnant parcel policy. It would have to be a bid process.
Well, the issue is that Castlemark Homes is not the property owner. They have the option to acquire the property, and it would actually have to be purchased by the adjoining property owner, as I understand it. And so if Castlemark Homes wanted to buy it, they would either have to close on the property first, or they would have to go through the public bidding process with the minimum bid. Is that correct?
They would be able to have an interest in the neighboring property.
But they don't have an interest. They actually have an option, which is not an actual ownership interest in a property. It's a right to acquire future ownership at a certain price.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
perhaps I can shed some light on it. The policy which is attached to the memo, and I know that you just got that on the table tonight, but it does indicate it has submitted evidence of ownership or control of an assembly of adjoining land, so that would allow a little bit more flexibility.
And Mayor, I would concur, but my concern is that, and this isn't the first time I've mentioned it, is that I think that these parcels should be offered for sale, even if it's only for 1 week, and it wouldn't hold up the process at all as well.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment, because if I didn't and I brought this up later, then it wouldn't be fair.
Okay. Council has a study item. Yes, Mr. Miller?
I would just like to note that the subject parcel was appraised in 2004 and offered for public bid, and we did not receive any bids on it in 2004. So we did do that previously.
Okay, we have a study session, so we'll be in recess and reconvene in the other room for our study session. If possible, we need to be done by 10:30. Pardon? For halftime? I didn't say why, I just said if possible. Okay. Our study session is for council to share with each other some, not every single detail, of what we learned at Community Conversations. And I know that various council members were able to make different amounts of conversations based on what their schedule was, and because they have other commitments too, so I understand that. But there was a lot of information gained, and we're going to share this tonight, and then on the 18th, we're going to have a report on the survey that was done, and then we'll have a conversation about that at that time. Okay, so anybody want to begin with sharing what they learned? I felt that they were very beneficial, as I said at each one when I introduced what we were going to do. People were very candid, open, forthright in their comments. There was a variety of comments. Not everyone agreed on items, but some people came with a specific item or issue they wanted to talk about. Others were there to listen and carry on a conversation with others at the table. I think it was beneficial because it was citizens talking to other citizens on various items, and many times they were people at the tables that didn't know each other at all, or maybe a couple people at the table knew each other and others didn't. So I think it was a learning experience for everybody as well as for us. I acknowledge that there are people in the community that don't want to pay any more taxes, that they feel that there's still people that we have to explain the tax bill to them, that we only get 27 cents on the dollar of it, because there were still people that were saying, well, I write my check, all those thousands of dollars to the city, and so we explained that, so we still have that going on. A lot of the people wanted to talk about the library and what happened. Some people wanted to rehash what happened in the last two elections. The very first community conversation that I attended with Maureen, it was right after we just finished all the snow season, and people were eager to talk about what happened with snow plowing and what didn't happen and what they would like to see happen. There were varying amounts of information that people had on knowledge of city services and programs. I think it was beneficial to have our vision and goals paper and our fact sheet and our financial update paper that was there, but people didn't necessarily talk about those from those sheets. You know, I think they took home and digested that, you know, and some people knew a lot and some didn't. Anybody else? Councilwoman McGinnis?
Well, I had a combination of the community engagement sessions, and then Dana and I also had office hours that were interspersed in the community conversations, and I thought that it was time well spent. They were different, it was a different synergy each time. I saw a lot of new faces. I saw a couple of faces that we see at council meetings and that have been very active in what's going on in the community over the last 18 months. So, it's good to have those points of view, as well as making sure that there were new people there that wanted to get involved and wanted to gain the information they needed to make decisions. So I thought that all in all, it was a positive experience. I think that one of the main overarching themes that I kept hearing, aside from the typical positions that we've heard people take in regards to taxes or cutting of services, was just a general concern about making sure that questions were answered. And we talked a little bit about it in different groups that I was involved in terms of, where to find information. Obviously, we talked about going to the city website. We also talked about the fact that our community relations department is one of the departments that has been cut as well. So some of the things that we have done in the community in the past, which people that have been around for a long time were able to refer specifically to, were not available anymore, and they understood that also played into some of the budget issues that we're having. But I thought that generally most of the people that were coming to both office hours and the community engagement were coming more so than to voice an opinion that they had already come up with before they came to that session, was to get answers to questions. Some people came with very specific questions. Some people came with more general questions, but I felt like that was kind of one of the overarching themes of people that attended, and I thought that was very encouraging. I took notes from sessions. We also asked people to forward notes that they took from their tables, which I think is telling of kind of where the community seems to be going on some of these things. And there were a lot of discussions about services and what level of services that people wanted, and what they thought that the city should do in order to cut some expenses, and what they thought that the community should do in terms of the revenue issue. And I think that there were a lot of people that attended both office hours and community engagement sessions that talked a lot more about a revenue issue necessarily than expense issues. That at least seemed to be a lot of what the feedback I was getting from tables, and I think that the documentation that we received from people that attended mirrored that as well. And of course, you have to acknowledge that there was discussion about cutting expenses, and there were suggestions and things that people think that we should do, and things that people commended us for doing already. So I think both of those topics of conversation were out there, and a general need to get answers. I was a little bit disappointed at one of my community engagement sessions that someone came with not even a fact sheet. I mean, of course, people are entitled to bring their materials and hand them out, but there was actually someone that came to a community engagement session with a list of questions, and they weren't, there wasn't information provided. I'm sure that there were a couple people that I spoke to at that community engagement session that were really disappointed that you've got a group of people, at times we probably had in excess of 50, 60 people. You had 6 tables with 10 people at each one, and they came there for answers, and they were handed a sheet that had nothing but questions in it. And I think that was really disappointing, because it defeated the purpose of why they were coming there. And I could go through and talk in specifics about those questions, but the fact of the matter was that there were things that were on there that were not factual. So that was a little bit disappointing. But I think in general, people that attended and had conversations with each other, even when it was heated, it was a really good forum for people to speak, feel like they were able to speak to a council person, get their specific questions answered, and leave, having a different opinion or a different knowledge base than they did when they got there.
Did people think that sheet was from the city? Because it had it didn't say who it was from.
No, it didn't, but there was a lot going on at some of these community engagement sessions, and I think the format was, we talked about having 2 or 3 council members there, but obviously if you've got 60 people that are there, and these are 60 people that have taken time out of their day to come and sit at the community center, and they want to talk about things, they want to interact with their neighbor. They definitely wanted to talk to the council people that were there, and get their opinions, get them to give them information that they couldn't find. And I specifically sat at a table where information was being handed out by a person that had every right to attend the session and every right to speak his piece and voice his opinions. But my issue comes with the fact that something that's pre-printed, that's being handed out to everyone that's there, and is nothing but additional questions, things like, just in terms of things like something really simple, like wind turbines that are out front, and that the city, paid X amount of dollars to pay for wind turbines. Did you know this? Question mark, question mark. And it's fine. I think all of us that attended, and all of us did get to attend some, and I'm really very happy for that. But we all were kind of in the trenches, and you saw that there were people with a lot of questions, and some of them you could answer more easily than others, and some of them were going to be based on, your style of governing and your policies and your experiences, and that's fine. But, that I thought was unfortunate, because there were people there that had come for the very first time and had set time aside, and that wasn't, the only issue that I had. But that is just something that I think it goes to that discussion about finding useful information. I mean, people know how to get a hold of each one of us if they want to know our opinion on something. But there were a lot of people that were there that came for facts that I don't even think that we would dispute, the seven of us, even though we have differences. And that is unfortunate, that those basic pieces of information, I've had some discussions, and I'm just going off on a tirade, but I will try to wrap it up. I've had some basic discussions about, disseminating the information, and there are people that are extremely interested in everything that's going on in the city, and they are able to put forth an amount of time and an amount of effort that they can use to go and get all of these pieces of information. But there's other things that are, small, minute details, and what's the best way to get that information to people, not rehash things that people are not interested in. And I think part of that is where we've been discussing, and I'm hoping that we can provide feedback based on our interactions at the community conversations about what the best way is to get that information out. But there are some limitations. I think that the website, we've been using it over the course of the last 18 months to provide information to the community. It seems like that is an easy place for people to go on their own time and look for information, and what's the best way to make sure that up-to-date information is on there. It's what people want. It's a way to get feedback or get answers to people that have questions in the community. So I think we kind of have to talk about that as well. I mean, I'm sure we could all go around the table and talk about what questions we heard the most, or what concerns we heard the most. I mean, you can already see it starting a little bit with the community survey feedback, and I don't know if it's people that are trying to preempt what they think the answer is going to be and trying to discredit the group that was selected because of their stellar reputation to give us feedback. I mean, these are the tools that we have to get in touch with the members of the community and get feedback from them and discuss it. And if it can't be, sitting in community conversations and having discussions with people without, some of the disruptions that I saw, if it can't be polling communities, which communities are doing everywhere. I mean, across the country, this is a form of it's an outreach way to get feedback from, and we're going to have all of the background on how that's scientifically going to be useful to us. So, I think to some extent you can get a little bit frustrated about that. I just have the mindset that we just have to do the best we can, and it's in my opinion that we're taking those steps and we're talking about it, and hopefully other people have things that they want to add, so we can come up with some ways that we can utilize that information and then move forward.
And one thing that was evident is that there's a varying degree out in the community of what people know and take the time to read and learn about, and what they don't. We're assuming when we put stuff on the website, or we send out Troy Today, or we send something out, or it's in the newspaper, or we talk about it at council meeting, that everybody knows. Well, guess what? They don't. A lot of people in the community know sometimes a little bit of information. There are people that know a lot because they follow everything, but I don't think that's a big number. So we need to be cognizant of that when we think we're we're really doing a good job putting everything out for people to see, they're not taking the time to look at it. We may be putting it out there, and so we need to think about how we want to do that so we can be more effective in getting that out to people. Robin, I know that was...
I'm not sure that we're putting it out there in a way that most of the community gets it. And I don't mean get it in an understandable point, but how people gather information today. And that was a pretty significant discussion in one of the sessions I was part of, was the whole communication issue. And it's not even as much a transparency issue as it is an information issue. And we all had the experience, I think, where we put down the fact sheet and people went, I didn't know that was our millage rate compared to everybody else's. You guys need to put this out. And what chart have you been in? Because it's been on the website, it's in every budget document we've done for as long as I've sat at this table. It was part of the millage discussions for both elections last year. So I don't think it's the information, I think it's the methodology. And if that means that we need to look at other tools, more town halls, whatever it is, I mean, to Maureen's point about people came with different expectations. Dana and I had one where people thought that we were just going to line up and somebody was going to ask us the same question and we were going to give, you were there too,
right,
3 different answers, and why isn't the rest of the council here? So the expectations of some people varied from what we thought we were going to do. But I did find some recurring themes that some of them are good and some of them are not so good. One of them is I do believe that half or more thought finally that this was a revenue issue, that our crunch is a revenue issue. How to solve that? We've got some solutions and some, and significant parts said just live with what we give you. There is a tax and a no tax, and there are some uncompromising individuals on both sides of that, but I do think at least half the people, and maybe a little more, thought it was a revenue issue, but that doesn't mean that anything can be done about it anytime soon. The library was what got people there. I mean, quite honestly, it was what got a lot of people there. And many did realize it's simply symptomatic. There is a trust issue. There is a trust issue between the community and us. Part of that is based on the fact that for big things, sometimes there's a split in council. And some of us don't play well with others, and we admit that. But it does create a bit of a trust issue, and some of them don't trust the management team we've hired. Some of them want to do more as volunteers. That came out in more than one session, that they are willing, they just don't know where. So that might be something that we could work on. I mean, I know the police department is working on using trained volunteers now in some of theirs, and maybe we do need to, as we cut our personnel and expenses, do kind of a skill set inventory of what could be done by volunteers, and then create a process to make that happen in a more formalized way. And the community does, particularly those who worked on the Vision 2020 project, they still see that as a valid option, even if it's more phased. But when we say, what do you want? That's what they want. And sometimes they seem to understand that they can't have it all, or at least all not right now. But when you ask them for a vision of their community, that's still the vision. That's still what people expect Troy to become. And I think one person said, that's your job, make this happen. But those are kind of the themes I saw in the 3 that I was part of.
Wayne, I thought you signaled, did you?
Yes. I was able to attend a couple of them. I found them very beneficial. I did note that the two that I attended, some of the same people were there. So I think, and I heard from one person tonight that they attended 6 or 7, which I think is good, but that can skew the opinion. I think if you've got someone at the table that's very strong, opinionated, and has an agenda, it may influence the people that come just for more information or have a tendency to be a little quieter. And they may not speak up as much. But what I did see at every table, that people were engaged, you know. And there were differences of opinion at the table, but they were civil. We didn't have any fisticuffs, didn't have to break up any fights or anything, but people were there, but they had an agenda, they were genuinely concerned, and I agree. One of the takeaways I had, people want to know what to do. What can we do to help? We understand there's a problem. The first reaction was they got mad. Okay, you're taking all these things away, we're not getting the services we've been accustomed to. They got mad, then they decided, okay, let's get over it, what can we do? And I agree with you, Robin, that came across really, really strong to me. And I think we've got a good group of volunteers. It's how do we channel that? And there's certain things they can't do, but they're looking, give me specifics, what we can do. The library, every table, there were people that just can't understand why we can't keep the library. Just very adamant about it. Understand the revenue issues, but let's live within our means. We balance our household budget. Why can't we have to do the same thing with the city? People love the city, though. They're encouraged. They still think we have a great city. They don't want to see it deteriorate. They like the safe city we live in. They love the services. They understand we're going to have to give up some things, but they did not want to give up that library. I mean, a majority of the people in the groups, you know. Occasionally you'd come across someone who didn't care, but that was the exception. Pretty much people said that in a city of this size, they consider that a core service, you know. And as far as the streets were concerned, there was a lot of discussion about that as well. The snow removal, and they considered that a safety issue, just like the police. They said if you can't navigate the roads, that's a safety issue, and that's a hazard for the police. That creates more police overtime and so forth. So we really believe you should rethink that snow removal and the control of the streets, because that truly is a safety issue, just not a convenience thing. But I was encouraged by it, and I agree, you can't communicate too much. No matter what we do and we think we're getting a message out, people don't get it. So I agree with you, Robin. I don't know the right mechanisms, but we have to do a better job, and it can't be just one way. It's got to be a multitude of ways of communicating to the people. I think we need not necessarily just stop these after 2 months. I think from time to time we need to have town hall meetings and invite people, and the council be out there more in front of the people, you know. And I wish I'd have been able to attend more of them. But the two I attended, I found very beneficial.
Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
We had, I thought they were very successful as listen and learn. They weren't town halls.
No.
Very different from town halls. So that idea, even tonight we heard from Troy Citizens United that they're holding a town hall and have invited elected officials. I don't know what elected officials, they didn't say. But the idea of this was really to listen and learn, and I think one of the important components was that residents talk to each other. It was certainly valuable that we were there, and I think the most successful was when we had 3, where people really could sit, because there were 50 or 60 people each time. At the beginning, I did 6. I was surprised two-way that, oh, look, some of the same. But I thought that it simply added flavor. We know that some folks would come in late and go along the side. I saw them come in, each one, and then we had some who were excited about things. I did assure everybody that the notes that were taken would be shared, and you each have a copy so that you can, these were handwritten notes. I saw later that TCU had sent out a press release that these were done specifically by it was completely random. It was whomever, as you know, sat through one. It was who would like to be the convener and introduce people, and who would like to be the note taker. Completely random, and you can see that they're handwritten, and they're here, and they do capsulize whatever people said in that table. There was no right or wrong.
Can I interrupt you for just a second while you're on that? Well, council also received emails from people that sent them directly on to all of us, or sometimes to one,
That's right.
so we have others too. Go ahead.
So that's just why I want to explain why that was here. I think that there were some specifics, and I think that there are things that we need to take action on. There's a credibility issue. There's a complete credibility issue, both from the electeds, from us, and from management. And we end up in this defensive posture like we heard tonight. A lot of defending, it's your budget, okay? It's your option, okay? But people, we have lost the trust. You brought up the trust, but I think in terms of credibility, where do you go for the true answers? There's obviously a noise machine that then brought in, these are the questions you should ask. Those wind turbines actually cost dollars. No, they didn't. But there is a noise machine which then makes us less credible or management less credible, despite the fact that the budget summary has a list of accolades on the back. Well, my neighbor said this. I think that we need to think about strategies to establish credibility, reestablish credibility, even though many of us are short-term for the next few months. And that I think this desire for an easy Q&A needs to be available on our website. And I am not sure that we can do that currently with the diminishment of community relations. However, I think it is valuable. And I know if you go back, Mr. Manager, and look at our goals, they did include things like marketing this city. People want to be proud of the city again. They recognize there is a black eye. As Councilmember Fleming pointed out, the library is something that's been in the paper so much and has scarred many and did bring many to the meetings. However, there's a general confusion about so many things, even though we think we address them. And I know that on the library website, if you go through, there will be a question like, can you charge for a card? But those solutions, which kind of make sense, and we've said it so much, no, by law you can't. If you looked at today's email messages that we received, and we've received a number, it still goes back, I have an idea, we could run it with volunteers and we could charge it with a card, and again, it goes back to, I think that to me, a Q&A right on the front page, not having to find, but to start punching in those and look at a cumulative, quite frequently asked questions, I think that that's just paramount. I really, really do. And a quick response back to that. So whether the strategies to reestablish credibility, to answer questions directly, I think is very important. I absolutely, I want to tell you, and because it came from many tables where I sat, and I did try to circulate throughout the tables each time, that people said thank you. And they wanted you all, even though if you weren't at that session, people were grateful for us to doing it, and they appreciate the work. There's no doubt that there's volatility, there's uncertainty, there's, all of that is going on. And in order to get away from the volatility and uncertainty, we need to have that vision that we all agree on. And we need to have a sense of clarity. And that's what has been missing. And when you have those discordant voices, which we have in our community, and as you mentioned, Councilmember McGinnis, even coming to a meeting and saying, don't ask those questions, ask these. That dissonance then creates further uncertainty, and it breaks down the ability to have a credible leadership, whether it is elected or selected. And I think we saw that. So for listening and learning, I thought that was a great way to go. It was not a town hall format. It was not designed to be that. But I think that we do have wonderful, wonderful citizens. And I found all of the sessions that I attended to be very civil, very cordial, and people who appreciated learning more. And I think we have to think about and design a way to help people find that information. If not in the vacuum of that information, then anything goes.
Martin or Dane, you're dressed as twins tonight, so which twin wants to go for next? Couldn't resist. Shirt, ties, suits, all the
The
same.
oldest twin will go first.
Okay.
Older.
Older.
I went to 6 sessions, I think, and Maureen and I had 2 or 3 office hours, so I think I got a good flavor, cross-section, by the amount of ones that I went to. And there were a lot of points that were made tonight that I totally agree with. But my sense from the entire session is that there still is a severe trust issue, and I've tried to address that by initiating some things, but we certainly need to do more. The other thing that I thought was an overriding theme was that we had 3 facets of people there. There were some that you could never change their mind on both ends. And then there was a group of people there that came to learn and listen. And I think those people walked away with a good feeling. That was my sense. They walked away with a good feeling. Didn't really matter what I thought, but I think they walked away with a good feeling. And I think the overriding theme for me was that the people see a revenue issue. And most of them are willing to pay and do their fair share. But they all had a but. They had a but that said, I want to make sure that we've streamlined, we've cut our costs, that we've done everything that a council should be doing. And I think until a good majority of these people are convinced that we have done that, we may never get the trust. And the other issue that I think we will never get their trust is as long as this council operates the way that it does, being split and never being able to really communicate amongst each other, we'll never gain the trust. Never. You can put your questions and answers on the website, and we can have these meetings, and we can do all that, but as long as this council operates the way that it operates, we'll never get the trust. And I think I came away from these meetings with that sense, and that bothered me a lot, because that's something that we can control. We don't have to be so rigid. And until we're willing to sit down and compromise and not be so rigid, we're not going to accomplish anything here, and the city is never going to trust us. So for me, it was a great experience, because I came away from listening to the people, and they told me some things that if this council doesn't wake up, it's not the city administration, it's us. And until we wake up, start to get together, start to communicate, and some people have to bend a little bit. And I hope in these budget sessions that are coming up here in the next few weeks, we can have some good discussions for a change. So I agree with most everything that was said here tonight, except for a couple of my comments. But I thought it was great for me.
Martin, yeah, I'm glad that you were able to attend some. I know your schedule when we originally set it up, I think you weren't sure if you'd be here or not. So that was good that you did. Would you like to tell us about what you learned?
Sure. I went to a number of I think it was the last 3, and one thing I found is I didn't pace myself very well. And so what I ended up doing to compensate for that was basically I stayed. And I think on those 3, I think I spent about 10.5 hours instead of the 6. And, you know, it gave me an opportunity also staying afterwards to talk with some people that, you know, we don't necessarily come from the same, we don't really approach certain things the same way. But we got, I think, an opportunity to, you know, kind of talk and get to know each other and kind of see things through each other's eyes. And I think that was certainly helpful. One thing I think for sure, and that I think it's almost universal, is that there is no such thing as too much information. And people on all sides of the issue said, open up the spigots. You guys need to have all the information available to you, and we would like to have the same. We would have all the information available to. Don't filter anything. Just put it out there, and you know, if it supports a position or if it hurts a position, doesn't matter. Get it out there. Don't hold back. Put it out. And I think that's important because there is no such thing as too much information. It's a different format, and didn't really have a good segue there, but this is a different format for us, and you know, it certainly had its benefits, it had its negatives. I mean, there were certainly times when, you know, the dominant individual at the table drowned out other voices or prevented them from speaking up. That was clearly a drawback, and hopefully not too many people were discouraged by that. But you know, everything has its pluses and minuses. So I think we do need to make sure that we take certain things with a grain of salt, realizing that, you know, it was a self-selected audience, and that there, you know, that there were a number of people that went to 5 or more of these. I think there were a handful that went to all 10 of them, and nothing wrong with that, I guess. I think there's I think the people that came have a genuine interest in the community, and I think there are certain things that are kind of logic defying that they're looking for us to solve. And the obvious thing is the one that's kind of upon us. It's a library, and they're looking to us for solutions, and that a long-term solution may require a short-term gap to bide it over. So I think everybody, I should say, I think most people were very willing to compromise, if you will, and wanted us to lead the community.
You know, one thing I am hearing from all of you is that you felt the need to get information out to people in different ways, either answering questions or getting information out. And I know that we've tried to do it, staff has tried to do it. There are advantages to having a marketing firm get information out to people. I know people say, oh, we don't want to have the expense of it, but on the other hand, if people are saying they want to get communication, and even though we're trying to do different things, would like council to kind of think about how we might want to do that with people. I think to expect council members to have community conversation things constantly is not a realistic thing. You know, I think it was good for us to do for the 1 month to gain some information. I did hear a lot of people indicate that they felt that because their taxes were going down, that they'd be willing to pay a little bit more to get some of the services that they felt that they needed to have. That did come across in all of the 5 different times that I was there. And I think that the best